The sky burned orange when they came. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the roof of the military base and watched the alien ships descend through the clouds. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They blocked out the afternoon sun and cast shadows across the city below. She had seen the reports from other worlds. She knew what was coming. The Kethvari had conquered 47 planets in the last century. Not a single species had stopped them. Their soldiers stood 8 feet tall with scales harder than steel and claws that could tear through armor. They saw heat like humans saw light. They heard heartbeats from 100 meters away. They were perfect hunters, and they had never lost a war. All units, fall back to defensive positions. Sarah spoke into her radio. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill. The first wave of Kethvari dropped from their ships like rain. They wore black armor that seemed to drink in the light. Their weapons fired bolts of superheated plasma that melted through concrete and steel like butter. Human tanks exploded before they could fire a single shot. Fighter jets fell from the sky in pieces. In New York, the Statue of Liberty collapsed under orbital bombardment. In Beijing, the Great Wall crumbled. In London, Paris, and Moscow, ancient buildings that had stood for centuries turned to ash in minutes. The Kethvari were not just conquering Earth, they were erasing it. High Talon Vrexis watched the destruction from his command ship with satisfaction. He was old by Kethvari standards, with scars across his snout from a dozen campaigns. He had personally overseen the fall of 11 worlds. Earth would be his 12th. The humans fight bravely, his second officer observed. They do not run. Bravery means nothing against superior force, Vrexis replied. Look at them. They use chemical weapons that throw tiny pieces of metal. Primitive. Their aircraft are slow. Their armor is weak. They will fall like all the others. By sunset, the major military bases of Earth lay in ruins. The human armies had fought hard, but they were simply outmatched. The Kethvari technology was centuries ahead. Their soldiers were stronger, faster, and better equipped. The battle was not even close. Vrexis ordered his troops to establish forward bases in the conquered cities. Rest well tonight, he told his commanders. Tomorrow we will hunt down the survivors and begin the occupation. Within a week, this world will belong to the Dominion. The coalition observers, representatives from 12 different species who had come to witness the invasion, sent their reports home. The messages were all the same. Humanity was finished. Another species would join the long list of the conquered. There was nothing special about these soft, fragile creatures. They would break like all the others. As darkness fell across the planet, something strange happened. The human military went silent. No radio transmissions, no counterattacks, no desperate last stands, just silence. The Kethvari intelligence officers were confused. They have given up, one suggested. The shock of defeat has broken their will. Perhaps they are planning surrender. Another offered. We should expect their leaders to contact us soon. Vrexis agreed with this assessment. He had seen it before. Species that fought fiercely at first often collapsed completely. Once they understood the situation was hopeless, the humans were probably arguing among themselves right now, trying to decide who would negotiate their submission. But Commander Sarah Chen was not negotiating anything. She sat in an underground bunker 50 meters below the surface, surrounded by screens showing satellite feeds of the entire planet. The regular military had taken terrible losses. Yes, that was expected. That was part of the plan. All ghost units. Report status, she said, into a secure channel that the Kethvari could not detect. One by one, the responses came in. From the mountains of Afghanistan, from the jungles of South America, from the frozen wilderness of Siberia, from hidden bases on every continent, special operations teams from every nation on Earth were checking in. They had stayed hidden during the initial attack. They had watched their brothers and sisters die. They had waited. Now they were ready. The enemy has established 47 forward bases, Sarah reported. Their patrols are moving through the cities. They believe the war is over. A voice crackled through the channel. It belonged to Colonel James Morrison of the British SAS. a man who had spent 30 years learning how to kill in the dark. With respect, Commander, the war hasn't even started yet. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. All units. Phase 2 begins at full dark. Rules of engagement are simple. No prisoners, no mercy, no traces. Make them afraid. Around the world, thousands of the deadliest warriors humanity had ever produced began to move. They painted their faces black. They checked their weapons one final time. They said quiet prayers to gods old and new. The Kithvari had studied human military doctrine. They knew about the tanks and planes and missiles. They knew about the armies and navies and air forces. But they had not studied human mythology. They had not learned about the creatures that lived in mankind's oldest nightmares. They had not learned about the things that hunted in the dark. As the last light faded from the sky, High Talon Vrexis looked out the window of his command post and felt something strange. A cold sensation running down his spine. On his homeworld, such feelings were considered primitive superstition. But in that moment, watching the shadows grow long across the conquered city, he could not shake the sense that something was very wrong. "Double the night patrols," he ordered suddenly. His officers looked at him with surprise. "High Talon? Is something wrong?" Vrexis did not answer. He did not know how to explain a feeling, but for the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt like prey. Somewhere in the darkness, a human soldier smiled. The hunt was about to begin. Sergeant Viktor Petrov of the Russian Spetsnaz lay perfectly still in the rubble of a destroyed building. He had been there for 6 hours, covered in dust and debris, his body temperature lowered by a special suit that made him invisible to thermal sensors. 20 meters away, a Kethvari patrol walked past without seeing him. There were 8 aliens in the patrol. They moved with the confidence of apex predators, their weapons held loosely, their posture relaxed. Why would they be afraid? They had crushed the human military in a single day. They were the masters of this world now. Victor waited until they passed. Then he rose from the rubble like a ghost rising from a grave. The last Kethvari in the line never saw him coming. Victor's knife found the gap in its armor where the helmet met the neck. The alien died without a sound. Victor caught the body before it could fall and lowered it gently to the ground. 7 left. He moved to the next one. And the next. And the next. By the time the patrol leader turned around to check on his soldiers, he was alone. 7 bodies lay in a neat line behind him, their throats cut, their weapons still in their hands. The leader opened his mouth to call for help. Victor's knife took him before he could make a sound. "Alpha Team, patrol eliminated." Victor whispered into his radio. 8 confirmed kills. Moving to secondary target. Across the city, similar reports were coming in. Delta Team had destroyed a supply depot. Gamma Team had killed 20 soldiers in their sleep. Echo Team had captured an officer and was extracting valuable information before disposing of him. The Kethvari had thousands of soldiers in this city alone. By morning, 200 of them would be dead, and this was just one city. On the other side of the world, Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos led her Navy SEAL team through the sewers beneath a Kethvari command post. The aliens had built their base in the ruins of a shopping mall, never thinking to check what lay beneath. "Thermal shows 30 contacts above," her tech specialist reported. "Most are sleeping. 4 guards on perimeter." Maria nodded. "We take the guards first. Silent kills only. Then we plant the charges." The SEALs moved like water, flowing through the darkness without sound. They had trained for years to fight in conditions like this. Every step was calculated. Every breath was controlled. They were not just soldiers. They were artists, and death was their medium. The first guard died with a hand over his mouth and a blade in his heart. The second saw his partner fall and tried to raise his weapon, but a silenced round took him between the eyes before he could fire. The third and fourth died seconds later, never knowing what killed them. The SEALs entered the base and began planting explosives. The Kethvari slept on, dreaming of their easy victory. They never woke up. When the charges detonated, the explosion could be seen from space. High Talon Vrexis received the reports with growing disbelief. Patrols were vanishing without a trace. Supply depots were exploding. Officers were being found dead in locked rooms with no sign of how the killers entered or escaped. In a single night, He had lost 300 soldiers. "This is impossible," he growled at his intelligence officers. "We have thermal imaging. We have motion sensors. We have the finest soldiers in the galaxy. How are primitives killing us?" No one had an answer. "The humans are hiding their heat signatures," one officer finally suggested. "They have developed suits that mask their body temperature, then use motion sensors. They are moving too slowly for our sensors to detect, High Talon. Or they are using our own patrols as cover, hiding in their shadows." Vrexus slammed his fist on the table. "Then use sound. We can hear a heartbeat from 100 meters. They seem to know this, High Talon. Reports indicate they control their breathing and heart rates. Some of them move so quietly that our audio sensors register nothing at all." This was not possible. The Kethvari had conquered 47 worlds. They had faced warriors of every kind, strong ones, fast ones, clever ones. None of them had ever learned to hide from Kethvari senses. None of them had ever hunted the hunters. But the humans had. In the jungles of Vietnam, American soldiers had learned to fear the night fighters who crawled through the darkness without sound. In the mountains of Afghanistan, warriors had survived against superior technology by becoming shadows. In every war humanity had ever fought, there were those who mastered the darkness. Now all of them were fighting together. As dawn broke across Earth, the Kethvari soldiers who had survived the night gathered in their bases with haunted eyes. They had not slept. Every sound had made them jump. Every shadow had seemed to contain death. "I saw nothing," one soldier reported, his voice shaking. "I heard nothing. But when I turned around, half my squad was dead. Just dead, lying in their own blood." One of them stood right next to me. Another said, "I did not see him until he wanted me to see him. He could have killed me, but he just smiled and disappeared. He wanted me to know that I was already dead, that he was just choosing when." The Kethvari had a word for this feeling. In their oldest language, from before they had conquered the stars, they called it Velkroth fear. It was the terror their ancestors had felt when they were still prey, when greater predators hunted them in the darkness. They had not felt this fear in 10,000 years. Vrexus ordered his troops to stay in their bases during the day, to rest and prepare. Tonight, he would send out larger patrols. He would use aerial drones and satellite imaging. He would find these human ghosts and destroy them. But deep in his hearts, he knew the truth. The humans had not just survived the first night. They had won it, and every night that followed would be worse. In her underground bunker, Commander Sarah Chen received the casualty reports with grim satisfaction. 300 enemy dead, 0 human losses. This was just the beginning. "All units, excellent work," she transmitted. "Rest during the day. Tonight, we increase the pressure. Make them understand that the darkness belongs to us." Around the world, the hunters slept, and the hunted began to prey. Lieutenant Colonel Yuki Tanaka of the Japanese Special Forces Group crawled through the ventilation shaft with the patience of a stone. She had been moving for 3 hours. In that time, she had covered less than 200 meters. But she had passed through 4 security checkpoints without being detected, and now she was directly above the Kethvari Regional Command Center. Through the grate beneath her, she could see High Commander Thesic reviewing reports with his officers. He was the 3rd highest-ranking Kethvari on Earth. His death would send a message that no one was safe. Yuki waited. She controlled her breathing until her heart beat only 30 times per minute. She let her body temperature drop until she was nearly as cold as the metal around her. She became nothing. A void, a shadow that happened to have a knife. Below, Thesic was growing frustrated. 3 nights, he snarled. 3 nights and we have lost over 1,000 soldiers. This is unacceptable. The humans are using psychological tactics, his intelligence officer reported. They are not just killing our soldiers. They are leaving messages. What kind of messages? The officer hesitated. Bodies arranged to face their living comrades. Kethvari words carved into walls, words from our ancient myths. The phrase, "We see you," written in blood. And, he paused, footprints. Footprints? Human footprints inside our perimeters. Inside locked buildings. One patrol reported finding footprints inside their own barracks, leading to each sleeping soldier's bed and then back out again. Someone had walked among them while they slept and chose not to kill them. Thesic felt his scales grow cold. They are trying to break our spirit. It is working, High Commander. Soldiers are refusing night duty. Some have stopped sleeping entirely. Morale is collapsing. Yuki smiled in the darkness. The psychological warfare was her favorite part. Any soldier could kill. It took true skill to make an entire army afraid to close their eyes. She began to lower herself through the grate, silent as falling snow. Half a world away, Master Sergeant David Cohen led his Israeli Sayeret Matkal team through the occupied city of Tel Aviv. The Kithvari had built a prison here, holding thousands of human civilians as hostages and laborers. Tonight, that prison would be empty. Guard towers at four corners, his scout reported. 30 soldiers inside. Prisoners are in the central building. David studied the layout. Standard Kithvari security. They relied on their superior senses and technology. They did not understand that humans had been breaking into places for thousands of years. Team 1 takes the towers. Team 2 handles the guards. Team 3 gets the prisoners out. We have 12 minutes before their patrol returns. 12 minutes to kill 30 aliens and free 3,000 humans. David had done more with less. The operation began at midnight. The tower guards died first silenced rifles from impossible distances, shots placed perfectly in the gaps of their armor. Then Team 2 went over the walls like liquid shadow, knives finding throats and hearts with surgical precision. The prisoners saw nothing until David appeared in their cell block, his face painted black, his eyes calm. "Do not make a sound," he said in Hebrew. "Follow us. You are going home." 3,000 people walked out of that prison without a single alarm being raised. By the time the patrol returned, the building was empty, except for 30 dead Kethvari and a message written on the wall. "You cannot hold what you cannot see." High Talon Vrexus received the news of Thesic's assassination with cold fury. His third-in-command had been killed in his own headquarters, surrounded by guards, behind locked doors. The human assassin had escaped without a trace. "I want every human on this planet dead," he ordered. "Orbital bombardment of all suspected hiding places. Level their cities, burn their forests. I do not care how many we kill. End this." His communication officer spoke nervously. "High Talon, the Dominion has refused orbital support. They say destroying the planet defeats the purpose of conquest. Then send for reinforcements. They have sent observers instead, High Talon. They want to understand how this is happening." Vrexis wanted to scream. The mighty Kethvari Dominion, conquerors of worlds, were being humiliated by primitives. And instead of helping, his superiors were treating this like a learning opportunity. The observers arrived the next day. They were senior military analysts from 5 different species, all allies of the Dominion. They watched the Kethvari patrols with scientific interest. They reviewed the casualty reports. They interviewed the survivors. What they learned changed their understanding of warfare forever. "The humans call them Special Operations Forces," one analyst reported. "Every major nation has them. They train for years, sometimes decades, to master combat in all conditions, but especially in darkness." "Why darkness?" another asked. "Because humans evolved as prey. For millions of years, they were hunted by predators with better senses, stronger bodies, and sharper claws. The night was death to them, so they learned to conquer it. They invented fire. They developed weapons. And eventually, they became more dangerous in the darkness than any predator that hunted them." The observers watched footage from Kethvari helmet cameras. They saw soldiers walking through empty streets, confident in their superiority. They saw shadows that seemed to move. They saw brief flashes of movement, almost too fast to register. And then they saw death silent, sudden, and absolute. "They are not fighting a war," one observer concluded. "They are hunting, and they have turned our soldiers into prey." That night, Vrexis ordered his entire army to remain in their bases. He surrounded them with every sensor and weapon the Kethvari possessed. He stationed guards at every door and window. Nothing would get through. At midnight, every light in the base went out. A single message appeared on every screen. written in the Kethvari language. We are already inside. The screaming lasted until dawn. When the sun rose, 500 more Kethvari were dead. The humans had not just infiltrated the base, they had been hiding there for days, waiting for the perfect moment. They had slept among their enemies, eaten their food, walked their halls. And when the time came, they had struck with perfect coordination. Commander Sarah Chen received the reports with quiet pride. The Kethvari were breaking. A few more nights, and they would shatter completely. All units, continue operations, she ordered. No rest for the enemy, no safety, no hope. Show them what humanity becomes when we embrace the darkness. The hunters went back to work. And across the galaxy, species that had thought themselves apex predators began to reconsider what that word really meant. The Kethvari soldier had not slept in 4 days. His name was Trekkus, and he had been a proud warrior of the Dominion for 20 years. He had conquered 3 worlds. He had killed hundreds of enemies. He had never known fear. Now he sat in the corner of his barracks, weapon clutched to his chest, eyes scanning every shadow. His scales had lost their shine. His hands would not stop shaking. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of his dead comrades' throats cut. Eyes wide with surprise, killed by enemies they never saw coming. They are everywhere, he whispered to himself. Everywhere and nowhere. We cannot fight what we cannot see. His commanding officer walked past and saw him. Once, he would have demanded discipline. Now, he just looked away. Half his soldiers were in the same condition. The Kethvari army was falling apart from the inside. Commander Sarah Chen had planned for this moment. 7 nights of relentless attacks had pushed the enemy to the breaking point. Now, it was time for the final blow. All units, this is Operation Long Night, she broadcast to every Special Forces team on the planet. At 0200 hours local time, we strike everywhere at once. Not military targets, psychological ones, command posts, communication centers, broadcast stations. We are not trying to kill them tonight. We are trying to destroy their will to fight. Across 12 time zones, the hunters prepared for the largest coordinated special operations attack in human history. Major James Morrison of the SAS led his team toward the Kethvari Continental Communication Hub in what had once been Berlin. If they could take this facility, they could broadcast to every alien on the planet. Remember, he told his men, we need the equipment intact. Kill everyone inside, but do not damage the transmitters. They moved through the ruined city like ghosts. The Kethvari had set up checkpoints every 100 meters, but checkpoints meant nothing to soldiers who could slip through shadows. One by one, the guards died without raising alarms. One by one, the barriers fell. The hub was defended by 200 soldiers. It took Morrison's team 40 minutes to kill them all. Not a single shot was fired. Not a single alarm was triggered. When it was over, the SAS stood in a silent building filled with bodies, the communication equipment humming quietly around them. London, this is Morrison. Hub is secure. Ready for broadcast. In her bunker, Sarah Chen smiled. All hubs report secure. Begin transmission. Across the planet, every Kethvari, screen, radio, and communication device suddenly activated. The message was simple footage from the past week. Kethvari soldiers running in terror from enemies they could not see. Proud warriors weeping in corners. Officers dying in their own command posts. And behind it all, a voice speaking in perfect Kethvari. You came to our world as conquerors. You burned our cities. You killed our families. You thought we were weak because we are soft. You thought we were prey because we are small. You were wrong. The footage changed to show human special forces training. Men and women running through darkness, climbing walls, fighting hand to hand. They moved with speed and precision that seemed impossible. For millions of years, we survived by learning to fight what we feared. The darkness was our enemy, so we conquered the darkness. Predators hunted us, so we became the greatest predators. You are not the first species to underestimate humanity. You will not be the last. The final image was simple, a human soldier standing over a dead Kethvari commander, knife in hand, face painted black. The soldier looked directly at the camera and spoke, "Leave our world. or we will hunt you until none of you remain." The broadcast ended. Silence fell over the HFY occupation force. Then the chaos began. In 100 different bases, terrified soldiers saw their comrades on screen and realized the same fate awaited them. Officers tried to restore order, but their soldiers no longer trusted them. If high commanders could be killed in secure facilities, what chance did regular troops have? Some units tried to evacuate. They ran to their ships, only to find the landing zones surrounded by darkness. Those who tried to cross did not return. Others barricaded themselves in buildings and refused to come out. A few attempted counterattacks, charging into the night with weapons blazing. They killed only shadows. High Talon Vrexus watched his army collapse and felt something he had never experienced in his long career. Despair. "High Talon, we must retreat," his last remaining officer begged. "We cannot win this war. The humans have broken us." "Retreat?" Vrexus growled. "I have never retreated in my life. The Dominion does not retreat. The Dominion has never faced an enemy like this." Vrexus wanted to argue, but he could not. His officer was right. In all their conquests, the HFY had never encountered a species that could match them in the darkness. They had always assumed their superior senses made them the ultimate predators, but the humans had spent their entire existence overcoming superior predators. They had developed technology to match every natural advantage. They had trained warriors who could control their own bodies, slow their hearts, lower their temperatures, move without sound. They had turned their evolutionary weakness into their greatest strength, and now they were proving that the darkness belonged to them. As dawn approached, Sarah Chen gave her final order. "All conventional forces, prepare for counteroffensive. Special operations have done their job. The enemy is broken. Now we take back our world." Across the planet, the surviving human military forces, tanks, aircraft, infantry, began to move. They had spent a week hiding and rebuilding, while the special forces waged their shadow war. Now they emerged into a battlefield transformed. The HFY defenders put up only token resistance. Their soldiers were exhausted, terrified, and demoralized. When they saw human tanks rolling toward them and human aircraft filling the sky, many simply surrendered. Others fled for the landing zones, desperate to escape this nightmare world. The liberation of Earth had begun, and the greatest predators in the galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. There are some species you do not hunt in the dark. High Talon Vrexus stood alone in his command post, watching the screens show his army's destruction. Everywhere he looked, HFY forces were in retreat. Ships were launching without authorization, commanders abandoning their posts, soldiers throwing down their weapons and running. 20,000 troops had landed on Earth. Less than 8,000 remained alive, and most of those were fleeing. He had failed. For the first time in his career, he had lost a war. Not to a superior force, not to advanced technology, but to shadows, to ghosts, to creatures that had no right to defeat the mightiest military power in the galaxy. The lights in his command post flickered and died. Vrexus drew his weapon and spun toward the darkness. "Show yourself," he roared. "I know you are there." Silence. Then, from the shadows, a voice spoke. It was calm and quiet, like water flowing over stones. "You should have stayed home." Vrexus fired toward the sound. His plasma bolt illuminated the room for a split second, showing empty corners and vacant doorways. "Nothing. No one. I have killed 1,000 enemies," he growled, scanning the darkness. "I do not fear one human." "You should." The voice came from behind him now. Vrexus spun and fired again. Again, nothing. "Your people evolved as predators." The voice continued, circling him. "Always just out of sight. You have never known what it is to be hunted, to be afraid of the dark, to know that death waits in every shadow." Vrexus kept his weapon raised, trying to track the sound. His thermal vision showed nothing. His audio sensors detected no heartbeat, no breathing. It was as if the human had become part of the darkness itself. "We learned," the voice said. "Every nightmare your ancestors never had, we lived through. Every fear you forgot, we remembered. The darkness was our first enemy, and we conquered it completely. What do you want?" Vrexus demanded. I want you to understand. The voice was closer now, almost beside him. Not for your sake you will not leave this room alive, but for those who will hear of your death, for the Dominion and everyone else who thinks humanity is weak. Vrexus lunged toward the voice, claws extended, his hand closed on empty air. We are not weak, the voice said from across the room. We are patient. We survived ice ages and extinctions. We fought saber-toothed cats and cave bears. We learned to work together when lone hunters died. We invented fire when the darkness came. And we never, ever, stopped adapting. You are prey, Vrexus roared. Soft, fragile creatures with no claws, no fangs, no armor. Yes, the voice agreed. And yet here we stand. And there you fall. Vrexus felt something cold touch his neck. He had not heard the human approach. He had not seen them move. They had simply appeared behind him like a shadow given form. The Dominion will send more ships, Vrexus said, keeping his voice steady. They will burn this world to ash. They will try, the human replied. And they will learn what you have learned. The same lesson every predator eventually discovers when they hunt humanity. We are not the ones being hunted. The knife moved. Vrexus, High Talon of the HFY Dominion, conqueror of 11 worlds, fell to the floor of his command post without another sound. The human stepped over his body and walked into the dawn. 3 months later, Commander Sarah Chen stood before the Coalition Assembly. Representatives from 60 different species filled the vast chamber, all of them watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to fear. You have asked us to explain how we defeated the HFY, she said, her voice steady. You want to understand how a species so new to galactic civilization could overcome the greatest military power among the stars. She paused and looked around the chamber. The answer is simple. You all evolved on worlds with long days, or gentle nights, or no darkness at all. You developed as apex predators, never knowing fear, never learning to overcome it. When you reached the stars, you brought that confidence with you. You conquered and dominated because you had never been prey. Sarah stepped forward. Humanity evolved differently. Our nights were long and dark. Our predators were faster, stronger, better equipped. We should have died 1,000,000 times over, but we learned. We adapted. We took our weaknesses and turned them into weapons. She activated a holographic display showing images of human special forces training. These warriors represent the peak of human evolution, not physical, but mental. They have trained their bodies to deceive your senses. They have conquered fear so completely that the darkness has become their ally. They are what happens when prey decides to fight back. A HFY representative rose. He was younger than Vrexus, his scales still bright, his eyes still proud. You defeated one army, he said. The Dominion has thousands more. Then send them, Sarah replied calmly. Send all of them. And they will learn what Vrexus learned. What every species in this room needs to understand. She looked directly at the young HFY. The darkness belongs to humanity. We ruled the night before your species existed. We will rule it long after you are forgotten. And anyone who comes to our world seeking conquest will face the same fate as your invasion force. Death in the shadows, terror in the silence, and the knowledge that they were never the predators they believed themselves to be. The chamber fell silent. In the years that followed, human special forces became the most requested military asset in the galaxy. Species that had once looked down on the soft, fragile humans now paid fortunes for their protection. The HFY Dominion never sent another fleet to Earth. The shame of their defeat, broadcast to every world they had conquered, had broken their reputation forever. And across the stars, a new saying spread among warriors and merchants, explorers and settlers. A warning passed from parent to child, from commander to soldier, from species to species. Do not fight the humans when the sun sets. Do not follow them into the shadows. Do not challenge them in the darkness they have mastered, for not even the finest soldiers in the galaxy can defeat the Furies that rule the night. Commander Sarah Chen retired to a small house by the ocean, where she could watch the sun set every evening. Sometimes, late at night, she would receive visitors, old soldiers from a dozen nations, men and women who had fought in the Shadow War. They would sit together in the darkness, not speaking, simply remembering. They had saved their world not with armies and fleets, but with patience, skill, and the ancient knowledge that lived in humanity's bones. The darkness is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. And somewhere in the stars, on worlds that humanity had yet to discover, other species were learning this lesson for the first time. They looked up at their night skies and wondered what lived in the shadows. They told stories of soft creatures with no claws who somehow conquered everything that tried to hunt them. They called them the Furies, the Night Walkers, the shadows that kill, but the humans just called themselves survivors. And in the end, that was enough.